Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We still have some space in front, so if you want to come closer, feel free. Thank you. Sorry, I had to check my speech. So, I already had a quite long one during the opening ceremony, so I will try to make it short for the people who attended. Thank you for coming and welcome to the conference on innovative approaches to combat wildlife crime. We have an amazing panel of speakers today from UNODC, Mr. Jorge Rios, from the IAEA, Manfred Gröning, the Czech Environmental Inspectorate, Ms. Pavla Ryova, the Elephant Action League and Wild Leagues, Mr. Andrea Crosta, and Terra Mater Factual Studios with Mr. Wolfgang Knöpfler. This conference will be followed by the screening of The Ivory Game, which is a documentary on illegal ivory trade between Africa and China and Hong Kong. You're welcome to attend, of course. It will be at 4:30. So all the speakers here today will explain their contribution to the fight against wildlife crime in terms of prevention, repression, and international cooperation. Innovative approaches will be handled as a cross-cutting matter during the whole conference that will be followed by question and answers. We are here today because in May, my boyfriend, Clemens Dus, brought me to the Hearst Talks that have been taking place annually for almost 10 years in Vienna. This event is bringing together NGOs, businesses, public institutions, and interested members of the public to engage them in a dialogue with extraordinary speakers and, most importantly, with each other. And actually, this is what they achieved today. I listened to Andrea, to his speech, and I was very impressed with his work. And then I watched The Ivory Game in Burgtheater, and well, then we decided to collaborate to make this conference today. I think the organizer of the Hearst Talks are here today. Angie Rattay, yes, you're here. And Adam Pavlov, but he will be here for the screening, I guess. So thank you. So almost the whole team is here of the Ivory Game. Mr. Walter Köhler, the CEO, who has been really a strong person to make the Ivory Game come true. Richard Latkani, the award-winning director, his wife, Anita, Wolfgang Knöpfler, I already mentioned him, and Andrea Crosta. Eva Schmidt also helped us. She's the head of the communication and marketing. The whole team brought the Ivory Game to be shortlisted for the Oscars in the category Best Documentary this year. And as you already know, Richard, Wolfgang, and Andrea will answer your question tonight after the screening. Just here, behind me, here is one of the showcases offered by the Natural History Museum of Vienna for the exhibition. It is displaying confiscated stuffed animals and other objects. So here we have the snakes, but in the rotunda we have much more. And we would like to express our gratitude to the Director General of the museum, so Dr. Christian Köhler, sorry, and to Dr. Dolibiowski and to Dr. Mischke for their help. Sorry, I'm pretty bad in German. And Silke Schweiger also, and the team of taxidermists who have helped with the organization of the showcases. We also would like to thank Terra Mater magazine for offering us a beautiful photo exhibition on the Ivory Game that is now in the Rotunda. And we have some of the magazines that are here. If you want to keep a memory of the exhibition, it's just here in front of me. Maria at times has kindly organized the photo exhibition. In the room today are people from the civil society. Maybe I can ask you to raise your hand if you're part of this group, like people from civil society, yeah. People from Research Institute on Wildlife, yeah. Governmental organizations, yeah. Thank you. Students, yeah. Media, so yeah, kind of. Social entrepreneur, yeah. and retirees. Yeah. Yeah. Embassies and UN organizations. Yes. Okay. So it's all of you have a role to play, and if not directly through your job, at least as a citizen. We really encourage you to network straight after the conference, before the screening. You will have 20 to 30 minutes to do so. And by networking, I'm not telling finding a job or funding for your projects. I'm really talking about creating partnerships, synergies, and maybe partners for common projects. This is the spirit that we had with Fabien Petit and I. We co-founded the UN Vienna Sustainable and Innovative Initiatives Club with this aim to create a platform for exchanges of ideas and promotion and implementation of projects coming from and outside the Vienna International Center, as long as they are in line with the United Nations values. Each speaker, I just would like to mention that during the break between the conference and the screening, you will be able to see Philippe Houma, who created Spotehon, with developing application for citizen science. And I really encourage you to have a look at what he does, because it can be, of course, a plus for your organization or your projects. It's very, very interesting, and we are very happy to have you. Each speaker will have 15 minutes of speech, according to the Elephant Action League. This is what it takes. It's the time it takes for an elephant to be killed for his ivory. In 2017, every 15 minutes we lose an elephant. It's an irreplaceable member of a family, of a group, a community. And some people know very well this feeling. More than 1,000 of them have been killed in the last 10 years, leaving behind them incomplete families. I'm talking about rangers and conservationists, and one of them, Wayne Lauter, has been killed last month in Tanzania. For him and for all the victims, the human victims of wildlife crime, we will observe now a minute of silence. Thank you very much. So we will now start with the speeches. First, Mr. Jorge Rios will take the floor. He's the chief of the Global Program for Combating Wildlife Crime and Forest Crime, Wildlife and Forest Crime, and the chief of Sustainable Livelihood Unit at UNODC. He is leading the delivery of technical assistance by UNODC to the countries affected by wildlife and forest crime, including the implementation of wildlife and forest crime analytic toolkit. Mr. Rios is a senior expert for the International Consortium on Combating Wildlife Crime, a partnership formed in 2010 by CITES Secretariat, Interpol, UNODC, the World Bank, and the World Customs Organization to combat wildlife trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elodie, for the nice introduction, and let me thank the UN Vienna Sustainable Innovative Initiatives Club for inviting UNODC to be part of this event. I had I think a comprehensive presentation set that I always use, but when I saw the colleagues on the panel, I realized I would be saying lots of things that they live on a daily basis. So I'm going to be a little bit probably not as coordinated as normal, but hopefully what I say raises the awareness of the issue, even though I assume everyone here knows, but raises just how important it is to address this not only as a conservation or a management topic, subject, but one of also enforcement. Before we begin, I'd like to not only thank you again, but also some of the missions that support us here in Vienna, because even though we're from a broad range of agencies and have different roles in the UN, unless you have political support to do your work, you don't get very far. And I need to say that we have a broad range of political support in Vienna and in New York for the UN, and in specific the program that I manage, to really apply enforcement techniques that we use in other parts of trafficking of drugs, arms, weapons, human beings, employ those to wildlife and timber crime. So some of you may know about the UN Office on Drugs and Crime. If you don't, let me just say that we're the specialized part of the UN, the United Nations Secretariat, and our role is to address drugs and crime. We have several governing instruments or governing bodies. One is for drugs, and we're governed by the International Drug Control Conventions. We won't talk about that here. But on the other side of the house, we have the crime. So the Crime Commission, and we go under the mandate of the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and the UN Convention Against Corruption, which are two widely subscribed to instruments of the UN. Now, if you read some of the things that the UN writes, this topic comes under the emerging crimes subject. So if you read about all these different crimes, it'll say emerging crimes, cyber crime, cultural property, etc., and wildlife crime. But I think most of us here understand that it's not an emerging crime. It's been going on for way too long. That's why we are in the position where we are. And the methods used to carry out this crime are indeed very mature. The resources that criminal syndicates garner from wildlife crime is huge. If you include timber and fish, then it's a very lucrative business. So we are very much linked to those two conventions because we know, and I think most of you know and recognize, that the trafficking and poaching of wild fauna and flora is a huge business, and it's linked to corruption, money laundering, violence, fraud, forgery, bribery, all the normal crimes that you have for any other crimes. Yeah. Now, initially, Elodie asked me to talk about innovative approaches the office takes to address wildlife crime, and I must say I was a little bit confused because not that the UN is not innovative, yeah, it's just that we don't where we work, we don't go out and we don't develop new systems. We don't we don't go out and buy drones to do X. What we do is we do what I would call the nuts and bolts of law enforcement. Again, this is, what we do is meant to complement management and conservation, which we fully support. But our work has to be focused on law enforcement because of the work we do. So, in talking to my colleagues, we thought, well, it's not really the innovative part of UNODC. We take what others innovate and we employ that to our work. Yeah. So, for example, I'll go into a little bit about what we do in the area of forensics and then a couple of other issues. But principally, it's using the innovative technologies of others to do our work. And, you know, something that we all need to recognize is we've been dealing with drug trafficking and human trafficking and arms trafficking for a very long time. And we have all the tools, we have all the approaches. If we would only employ what we use against these other crimes to address wildlife crime, we'd be much better off. For example, well, you'll see a lot of this in the film that will be shown, but you know, the issue of simply using informants or using wiretaps or using controlled deliveries, which we use on a daily basis, yeah, to fight the other crimes, is hardly ever used to address wildlife crime. Yeah, so we really don't have to invent new technologies or invent new approaches or new strategies. It's all there. Yeah, the simple use of mutual legal assistance to, you know, to cooperate on investigations among states is hardly ever used. Pavla is a wonderful example of someone who deals with the difficulties of using mutual legal assistance in her work, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know if she'll talk about it now, we've gone over this many, many times on numerous adventures throughout the world where we've had some downtime, is the difficulty that states have in exchanging information for investigations. And this is a huge problem, because unless you investigate, yeah, and really come up with strong cases and have a partner on the other side, you're not going to get very far. What you'll do is what we sometimes do in drug trafficking. You'll only corner and arrest the person who's at the end of the chain. You will never really get up to those who are highly invested and really lead this kind of criminal organizations. So what is it that we do in terms of innovation? Like I said, we take innovation and we try to employ it to our work. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, and I hope not to be infringing on Manfred's work over at our sister agency here, the IAEA, is, okay, see, I'm already just uncoordinated, but what are the challenges? Yeah, where we employ some of this technology. It's clearly the area of, you can press that button and this thing will come up. This one? Yeah. It should work. Up? No? Okay, our technology's not working. Oh, there you go. These are screens for us, yeah. Sorry about that.
Welcome to the UN.
They must have been on pause, but just so you don't have to turn your back. The enforcement issues are with poaching investigations. Sorry.
You're still here.
Yeah.
Discrimination.
Illegal logging and fishing, and the capture of live animals. These are just some of the issues with enforcement. So you're not only talking about poaching, but you're talking about captive breeding. You're talking about wild sourced populations introduced into legal markets. Yeah, just you name it. The scope is very broad. So those are perhaps just a few of the challenges where we really encounter some difficulty. You would think that most countries, and here now I'm talking about forensics, yeah, what we see on CSI and this movie on Netflix where, you know, he's this blood spatter analyst. It's one of those movies on that's very interesting or series to watch. You know, forensics is a major issue in wildlife crime investigations. Yeah, so you can see from the chart here some of the analytical tools around the techniques. You would have the wildlife crime scene investigation. You have the collection of evidence, you know, forensics, human forensics, ballistics, digital forensics, so the use of, you know, checking out somebody's cell phone, etc. You would think that this is widely used throughout the world for traditional crimes. Yeah, but there are some countries where the introduction of forensic evidence is not permitted, or it's simply not in the law. Yeah, so when we go to a country and we want to help them with forensics after an animal has been poached, in a few cases, you know, they don't have the laws that allow them to gather the evidence and include it in investigations. So it goes to, you know, such a low level of capacity in some of these countries. But in some countries, there's very strong legislation where indeed the introduction of forensic evidence is very important. Now, what we do at UNODC, and I'm not talking about just ourselves, but in cooperation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they have a huge lab on forensics. There's a group called the Trace Network on wildlife forensics who works throughout the world to work with member states to help them implement technology at a local level to do forensics. We try to bring all of this together for the use of investigators in the drafting of cases, because you would be surprised just how many cases around the world never make it to court, number one, in wildlife cases, and number two, just how many cases around the world are, once they make it to court, if they do make it to court, are thrown out by the judge because of a simple lack of preparedness on the part of the prosecutor. Whether it's a terribly written case or the information is wrong or the witness doesn't show up, but for the most part, the guy that was arrested by the ranger who worked very hard to arrest him is let off without any penalty, and that creates obviously a lack of motivation for the folks on the front line. So this is the kind of stuff that we do, and we'd like to use forensics, and I know our colleague from the IAEA will talk about some of the innovative work they do, which is very important to our work. In casework, in traceability, and intelligence. So in casework, it's basically building stronger cases. Yeah, and you heard the ambassador at the opening talk about special prosecutions. That's something that we worked very closely with Kenya to establish these special this group of special prosecutors. But they need evidence to build their cases, because several years ago, Kenya had a very difficult rate of convictions, well, barely non-existent. Since the Kenya Wildlife Service has really started focusing on prosecution, they've increased the level of prosecution in Kenya highly. The sentences are also very much are very strong. You know, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in fine, and then I think it's 30 years in jail. I'm not sure, but before it was nowhere near that. The other is traceability. Yeah, if you read the World Wildlife Crime Report, you'll see that there's a lot of laundering of, I catch a tiger in the wild, I launder him in a captive bred facility, and all of a sudden he ends up on the market. Yeah. So through the use of forensics, we're able to do the traceability of exactly where some of the wildlife comes from. And that's very important. It's very important, particularly with stockpiles. You may hear that, a country has X. You saw the picture downstairs of that burning ivory, yeah? That was the Kenyan stockpile. So what happened there was, well, they burnt all their ivory, but there's some countries where they stockpile it and it gets lost. It disappears, or the 1 meter size tusk turns out to be a half a meter, yeah? And this goes somewhere. It doesn't sit around. It goes to the market. So, if it's properly analyzed and then it's seized, and you analyze it again, you can pretty much find out where it may have been. And that's something that is very important, and I think uses this kind of technology very importantly, because there's a huge loss of stockpiles, and it ends up in the market. The other is intelligence, where we try to identify where that elephant or rhino may have been poached. And we do that with the University of Washington, where they have a big database on elephants. Yeah, so they run around Africa picking up elephant dung, and then they analyze it. And then when a seizure is made, hopefully they can trace that DNA to a specific piece of dung and find out that elephant was at some point roaming around, I don't know, the Mara or Chile. And that helps us, hopefully on intelligence, to help pinpoint where we may be better suited to invest our enforcement. Now, some of this is clearly not real time, and it's very slow, but we think it's a very good use of technology. I only have a few minutes, so let me. I definitely want to talk about this gentleman here. But before I do, let me just say that another thing that we are trying to do for the states is help them identify how best to do charges. Yeah, because up until now, not only were they having a hard time coming up with cases, they were having a very hard time with charges. So if I get caught in a park with a rifle and a piece of ivory and I'm trespassing, you know, they didn't know what to charge me on, whether it was the gun, the trespassing, or the ivory, or whatever I may be holding. So we've put together these that you see up here. These are meant for frontline investigators and prosecutors, and it basically helps them identify what are the minimum points you have to prove to charge someone. So if I want to charge Manfred with trespassing on in a national park, I go here and I say, I need these 5 points. If I don't have these 5 points, there's no reason for me to continue my work. I can go on to the next charge. And this has been highly useful for our colleagues in Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and Botswana. Some of the frontline states that are faced with these issues, because only by prosecuting and putting these folks in jail can you really make a difference. And I don't mean conservation is not right. I'm saying, you know, these guys have to go to jail. They'll pay the fine. You know, nowadays they get caught, they pay their fine, and they're on the next plane out. That's what we found. Yeah, so unless you put them in jail, yeah, or keep them there to put them in jail, you're not going to make headway. So that's those are some of the general things that we do. We also work with rangers, but we don't only focus on the mega species. So the the elephant, the rhino, the lion, the big cats. But this is why I brought him. Normally. His name is Percy, the pangolin. He comes. We got him in the conference of the parties in South Africa. I'm sure you may have one as well. Yeah, our colleagues at IFAW were giving them out, but relatives of Percy. People don't understand that there's a host of other animals, or a host of other species that are being pummeled by organized crime. We know in working with crime that the traffickers don't really care what they're trafficking. They're looking at the points of least resistance. And you know, if you're going to traffic heroin, you're going to go to jail. If you're going to traffic methamphetamines, you're going to go to jail. But if you get caught, for the most part, in many of these countries, trafficking any wildlife species, chances are, most chance, very highly, you're not going to go to jail. Even, you may not even get charged, yeah, convicted or sentenced. So. And the pangolin, even though he's now on Schedule 1 of the CITES list, is the most, as you know, I just repeat this because I think it's important to the species, is the #1 trafficked species in the world, and they're quickly dwindling. But it's not only pangolins, it's stuff that I saw at the zoo the other day. Our good friend here, Harold from the Vienna Zoo, is here, and he took us to show what they're doing for conservation of species that we would never, ever perhaps think about going to see. But these are all very important because, as I think Elodie mentioned, it's the biodiversity. So, in the UN we have the SDGs. So we do this not only because of the conventions, but we do it because we have to help member states implement the SDGs, especially implement SDGs 14, which is for life underwater, 15 for life on land, and it's all linked to sustainable livelihoods. It's all linked to economics. You heard the ambassador from Kenya talk about how many people that employs, and sometimes perhaps a political innovative way that we've been working is not only trying to convince folks that it's great to save the species, but it's really important for the conservation of or to save livelihoods and to keep people employed and to keep the GDP up. Because as I told the government in Tanzania not too long ago, I don't think many people would go to Tanzania if they had no more wildlife. I mean, it's a beautiful country, but unless you go, most likely you're going there for that. But I have so much more to say, but I know that I'd really like to hear from others. They have great experiences on what they do. So Elodie, I think that's all I can report on the innovation factor, but we're very happy to be here, and I'd like to thank all the colleagues who traveled to be here with us today. Thank you, Elodie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So now we will give the floor to Wolfgang Knöpfler. So Wolfgang is one of the producers of the Oscar shortlisted documentary film The Ivory Game, that you will maybe see later on. He's also an honorary ambassador for the Jane Goodall Institute. He worked for Jane Goodall in Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania before focusing on his film career. And he has been working in the film industry for many years. And his other credits include Cannes nominated feature film Funny Games by director Michael Haneke. I pronounce it in a French way. The world's famous TV series Commissar Rex, as well as numerous natural history documentaries that have won every major award from the Emmy Down.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for having me here. Innovation in filmmaking, and I think innovation in filmmaking, we constantly evolve. We constantly have to be innovative to get the attention and keep the attention of the audience. With The Ivory Game, it was a very special case. I've been working in the film industry for a long, long time. And I've been trying to push films about the environment, animal protection, conservation for a long time. And usually what we would hear from the commissioning editors at the broadcasters say, our audience doesn't want to see that, you know. Really, just give us nice and lovely pictures of cuddly animals and our audience is perfectly happy. A little bit of science here, a little bit of science there, and we're happy. But new media has started coming up, you know. You're talking social media, you're talking YouTube, you're talking Vimeo. And the normal audiences that would watch programs, they started shifting. They went away from general television, especially the young people. So they are much more likely that you would find them on YouTube. They would be watching, they get their information from the internet. And they also are much more active, yeah, in terms of what kind of information they want. For them, it's not enough to see an animal in the natural habitat, but at the same time, they hear about poaching, they read about poaching, they read about logging and burning down of forests to make palm oil plantations. But in the general broadcast media, this would not be at prime time to be shown or would be headline news, so they get this information. So when Richard came to us with the idea of this project, we were aware a little bit about it, but we were making wonderful films about elephants, the soul of the elephants with the Shubears in Botswana in the Okavango Delta. But Richard came to us and said, listen, what's going on here is amazing. This is an absolute tragedy. There's killing fields, there's slaughtering going on, and the world doesn't know about it. We need to do something about it. And he came with an amazing concept, which he will tell you a little bit more later about it. So the whole experience of the Ivory Game was producing it was as exciting as the film itself. It involved everything from the filmmakers out in the field taking great risks, from the cast, I call them cast, from our people who work on the front line, who literally risked their life, as did the filmmakers themselves, to the producers or production company who decided, okay, you know, there is a need, we need to do something here, and we don't have a conventional broadcaster, we know they don't want that. Time was too short to go through film financing funds where you would get soft money. So they risked. They put the money on the table and say, there is something that needs to be done. Yeah? So how do you make an impact? I mean, you had celebrities going out, they followed by TV crews, they do a little show. You have other celebrities doing little clips like Catherine Bigelow and others. And you get this information, but it doesn't make an impact. So we were sitting down and say, what can we do? How can we impact? How can we really reach the people? I mean, obviously the best thing would be cinema, because you're in a captive audience. You don't have ad breaks. You know, you don't go to the fridge to get something to eat or to drink. You're in a captive place, so I can really tell you my story, and I know you will listen to it. Yeah? So cinema was obviously one of the choices which came on. And for cinema, then you need proper money. You know, you need to make it big. You need the cameras. You need the shooting days. You need the helicopters. You need the drones. You need travel, crews, everything. At the same time, Netflix became big in Europe. And Netflix, I remember when I first watched Netflix, it was a weekend, and I don't know how many documentaries I watched, and after that I wanted to throw myself out of the window. Because I saw cowspiracy and bottled and blue oceans and you name it. I'm just like, oh my God, the world is already dead, everything's too late. So we decided to go big, to go bold, to really create and craft a film that will glue the people to their chairs. And not only that, what we wanted to achieve is that it has an impact and people can act. Yeah? That they get a solution, they don't sit there just in anger, that they are being given hope at the same time, and then being given access to the right people if they can help with money or help convincing governments to change legislations and laws. And our hope was, and that was a lucky coincidence actually, because we knew China is the biggest market. China is absolutely the biggest market. We need to get that film to China. And we had this wonderful investigator who only had to appear pixeled, and the voice changed and everything. And during the course of the film, he came out and said, you know, yes, I'm Chinese, but I'm not only, I'm not a traitor. Not every Chinese is like those poachers. These are few, these are criminals. They give us a bad reputation. I want to show the world that there's other Chinese peoples as well. And we can see that clearly now, and I think our film played a little bit in a role, that China has stopped, and by the end of this year, the trade in ivory. And I hope and I think that our film played a little role in it, and a big role in it that it changed in China is Hong, our contributor in the film, who went out bluntly. We were afraid this film will never go out in China, and the biggest surprise came when we were invited to the Beijing International Film Festival. And they said, of course, you know, it has to go through censorship and what. And we had to change two things. The one thing that in our original version we said China hasn't announced the date when it stopped the trade. So when we came to the festival, China had announced the trade. So we had to change that line. And then they asked us to change some images of Beijing, which we filmed. Not that they had a problem with the images, but we were filming illegally on Tiananmen Square, and they said this will give us a lot of trouble, please can you put other pictures of Beijing in the film. So it went out in China, you know, and it won the prize for Best International Documentary, and so we are very, very happy with the result. Going back to the innovative approach, I think we really have to think how the whole media runs now, you know. If you look into social media, you have 8 to 10 seconds to get your message across. Yeah? 40 seconds is already too much. At the same time, there's a hunger and thirst for real information. Yeah? And I think we've went into a gap here with this film, and I hope I not only hope, I know we will continue making things like that. And we have to be innovative again, because there is no such thing as a formula for making a film. We could say, oh yes, now we've done ivory, and the next thing is we do tigers, and then we do rhinos, and then we do pangolins. You have to think of new ways as well on how to approach these films and these stories.
Thank you very much. Of course, it will. Yes. Yes. So, thanks again. Now we will hear Pavla Riova. She's a biologist and zoologist who has been working for 24 years already as a wildlife enforcement inspector. She's the head of the special department of the Czech Environmental Inspectorate, which is dealing with the fight against wildlife crime and trafficking. She's been doing this for 14 years. And her team has been involved in successful investigation on illegal trade in parrots, rhino horns, ivory, tiger products, and other goods made of endangered species that are going through the Czech Republic. She's also a member of the Interpol Wildlife Crime Working Group since 2004, and she's working there as a representative of the Czech Republic. She's also dealing with international cooperation in combating organized wildlife crime.
Thank you very much, Elodie. So I must be here because I don't have on screen over there. So I would like a little bit speak about Czech Republic and situation with wildlife trafficking in my country. It's a very specific situation because most enforcement people and most people which are dealing with wildlife crime and wildlife enforcement are focused on Asia market or African poaching. But Europe has own specific situation. The biggest consumers of wildlife are on one side Asia. It's known about products and bodies and dead specimens. But on the second side, European Union is the biggest consumer of live animals, pet animals. And the European Union is a big market for wildlife. Population in Europe is more than 500 million people. It's less than China, but more than USA. And our specific situation depends on rules in European Union. We have free trade zone, free movement of people around Europe. It's very pleasant for all of us concerning traveling, but it's a nightmare for customs, inspectors and policemen because we have limited customs controls inside Europe. We don't have borders and the investigation and enforcement is very problematic. Czech Republic is quite small country in Central Europe. So small country. Why our country should be important in point of view wildlife trafficking. But we are a big community of breeders, big Vietnamese community, and big wildlife trafficking too. Unfortunately, Czech Republic don't have land border. Sorry. We have only 5 international airports and international post service, and our own border, our main points of entry are at the airport and post service. Breeding of exotic animals is a very popular hobby in the Czech Republic, so huge amount of breeders, many traffickers, many companies, and quite huge amount of animal markets. So some pictures from our cases. Popular hobby, breeding of exotic or rare species of parrots, including very rare species as Lear's macaws, hyacinth macaws, palm cockatoos. Reptile breeders, very interesting species of monitor lizards, rare species of tortoises, cacti collectors and cacti growers, very known expeditions of cacti growers to Mexico, Bolivia, and they collected wild cacti from these countries. Beetle and butterflies collectors, popular hobby, again, special markets with beetles, insects, butterflies in Czech Republic. Hunters, popular hobby again, hunters, bears, wolves, otters, lynxes, everything, and Vietnamese community. In this moment, Vietnamese community is one from the biggest problems for us as for enforcement, because we have second biggest Vietnamese community in Europe. The first one is in France. In Prague, we have Sapa Market. It's something as a little Hanoi. It's an independent small city in the Prague. More than 10,000 Vietnamese traders. Absolutely problematic inspections. Sapa Market has own police unit, only focused on Sapa Market, but they are not so successful. It's very complicated. Some samples of our cases from last year. One big operation was focused on rhino horns. It was very surprising for us. Some years ago, we didn't know about route of rhino horns, ivory or tigers through Czech Republic. It's incredible, Central Europe. Why? But it depends again on the Vietnamese community, and one road of rhino horns is really through Czech Republic. We have some Vietnamese organized syndicates. Operation Rhino, we seized 22 rhino horns. There were 7 house searches and 17 accused offenders. Similar operation Ossos focused on ivory, tiger products, and even activities of the syndicates were connected with drug trade, so production of pervitin and trade in pervitin. 11 house searches, 3 perpetrators. Some pictures from house searches, rhino horns, tiger claws, tiger teeth. Very interesting work. If I can ask you for start a video. It's a short video from this operation. Big seizure of rhino horns at the Prague airport, hidden in an electric coil without sound. Arresting of offenders. It's not usual view on wildlife crime. And finally, we burned the seized rhino horns during ceremony in Zoo Králové. Okay, thank you. We have many other operations. Recently, operations focused on ivory, illegal trade in ivory, involved false antique ivory. There is a big problem how to prove the real recent ivory against the real antique ivory. And very interesting is our recent operation Tiger, focused on possible trade in tiger products in Europe. We started a few years ago with the seizure of one tiger skeleton in a Vietnamese car in Moravia, in one region of the Czech Republic. Few months after, we seized two complete tiger skeletons smuggled from Prague to Hanoi at the Prague airport, hidden in HiFi speakers. After that, many other seizures of tiger jewelry for happiness, tiger canines. Sometimes they produced fake jewelry made from molars, not only from canines, but they cut one root of the molar and produce typical jewelry. And other cases. Elodie asked me to speak more about innovative approach. How to say it? We would like to be innovative, but sometimes we fight against our own government about rules, about administratives. Many people, including my friends, believe that investigators are somebody as a James Bond. It's not true. We are officer, many administrations, and after many days spent in office, there is a field work and some adventure during operation. Big innovation for us would be real effective enforcement. But real effective enforcement isn't possible without collaboration between biologists, environmental inspectorate, environmental inspectors, and criminal authorities. I'm inspector, I'm not policeman, so I don't have responsibility for arrests, for wiretappings and other things, but I need these techniques for good investigations. So we must work together with customs, with police, and after that we can be successful. Joint operations, very popular topic in last years. We tried to make two joint operations with customs and police, Operation Tiger Eye and Operation Sandokan, focused on Asian passengers and Asian cargo. But it is not so successful as sometimes is presented. Operation Cobra, Interpol operations, I don't know, Cage, and many others. Inside Europe, these short-term operations aren't so successful because the community is close, the information is changed between offenders very quickly. So after first few days, such operation, you are completely without results. But for us, big surprise or big results from this operation was information about extensive trade in tiger products directly in Europe. You can see pictures. There are many bottles with different liquids containing animal tissues and some rest of something, even broth, cube of something as a broth or paste. You need very good DNA analysis, and if you have good experts, you can detect that these products contain tiger DNA. So Vietnamese groups in Czech Republic, and I suppose in surrounding countries or other European countries too, are trading with tiger paste, tiger broth, tiger liquids. Innovative approach for us is a combination our responsibilities for inspections and for investigations. We made complete inspections of tiger breeders in the Czech Republic, and surprise was that we found records about 360 live tigers reported in Czech Republic in last year. 360. It's a quite incredible number of tigers. An incredible thing is that it is not in zoo. Zoo is minority. Main part of these tigers are in private facilities. And many of the tigers died in a very young age. this graph, you can see the red columns are number of dead tigers in zoos, and yellow columns is the number of dead tigers in private facilities. Normally, tigers live up to 20 years, 18, 20 years in the wild and in the zoos. But in the Czech Republic, young, quite healthy tigers die till 4 or 5 years, and the dead bodies are missing. Why? Why the tigers die in such young age, and where are the bodies? Somewhere is a source of tigers and tiger bodies for black market, even inside directly in EU, European Union. We collected DNA samples. It's a very funny work with tigers, hair or droppings, and try to use forensic analysis. It's other innovative approach. Use more and more forensic analysis for evidence. Our DNA analysis in our cases confirmed tiger blood, monkey blood, tiger paste, rhino horn residues in the rhino plates confiscated or seized during house searches, rhino horn residues on cutting machines confiscated in flats or houses of perpetrators, special saw used by Vietnamese perpetrators for cutting rhino horns, and, for example, such yellow powder as a curry. You can see it in many, many Asian shops. But this powder contains DNA of tiger and DNA of rhino. How to recognize it on the market? In this moment, we have asked our Ministry of Interior for budget, and we have approval for a new genetic project in Czech Republic. It should start in January, and we would like, in collaboration with experienced genetic lab, develop a new diagnostic kits for DNA analysis, especially for heavy processed materials. Because in many of our cases, we weren't successful because we weren't able to prove content of DNA in heavy processed material. If the tiger broth is produced by long boiling, several days boiling, the DNA is completely destroyed, and you are not able to prove the presence. But our genetic expert told us that there are some possibilities how to prove it, to use some prions, proteins. Sorry, I am not genetic, so the future for us. We would like to do a research of tiger individual identification, because in this moment you cannot prove that the tiger blood or this particular product is from particular individual tiger. You only can prove that it's a tiger species, but individual profiling of tigers is not possible in this moment, but it's for us, our task, and we would like to establish complete tiger DNA database. We have all samples from Czech tigers, and we would like to collaborate with other countries and collect more samples. Other forensic method which is used by our inspectors and our investigators is age testing by radiocarbon analysis. It's a special method based on carbon-14 activity, and we use this method for recognition of recent and antique ivory. So we take some samples, very small amount of ivory, and the Academy of Science laboratory in Academy of Science use accelerator mass spectrometry. I'm not physics, so sorry, I'm only investigator. So other methods, X-ray fluorescence spectrometry and Raman spectrometry. These spectrometers are used by our pollution unit, pollution crime unit at the Czech Environmental Inspectorate. But we start to collaborate with them, and in this moment we try to recognize false ivory from right ivory. You can see the graph. The ivory reference sample is green color, and our tested samples from one operation focused on ivory, Operation Ebor, and we proved that the ivory is fake. It's how to say it? You can recognize true and false ivory by the morphological testing or analysis, but you can have some specific cases, small pieces of ivory, and you need such techniques as spectrometers are, and it could be help for investigators. Similar situation with fake rhino horns on markets, especially Vietnamese markets, are not only true rhino horns, but many fakes. And sometimes the fakes are very realistic. On the first view, you are not able to recognize if the rhino horn is false or not. We cut the fake, and you can see the inner structure. And we use spectrometers for identification what material was used for the production of these fakes. It was calcium carbonate, and the surface of the rhino horns was special modeling resins, and you can see the graph from the spectrometer. And other using of spectrometers is recognition old taxidermy specimens, stuffed specimens from recent poached. It's a quite recent case from last month. We had such a brown bear stuffed, and we tried to use Raman spectrometer and found incredible huge amount of arsenic. Arsenic is an element which was used by taxidermists many years ago, in 17th, 18th, maybe 16th year. And for last 20 years, 30 years, arsenic is prohibited and shouldn't be in taxidermy specimen. And we found 4,000 ppm of arsenic in this brown bird. It's a quite risky and dangerous specimen. So from our point of view, the most important innovations or effective approach to the wildlife enforcement is a multi-agency collaboration. Wildlife inspectors with experience with animals handling, biology, identification, morphology, customs, police, and judiciary, because many cases are lost during trials and during judiciary process, and forensic scientists as help for our investigation. And collaboration of all these parts, you can have some positive, for us, positive results. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. So we know that it's hard for people to be focused for a long time during a conference, so we will have just a little game for your brain to relax a bit before the next two speakers. We have some riddles, so we hope you have been very attentive during these speeches, and you can win some gift from Terra Mata Factual Studio. So you have DVDs, a cup. Maybe Fabien, could you just they are here. Check there is nothing personal in there. And so we will ask you questions, and maybe Jorge, Wolfgang, Andrea, Pavla, and Manfred can offer you this gift if you can answer the questions. Is it okay? You're ready to play? Okay. So the first question is a bit tough. What are the 4 wildlife forensic applications that Jorge mentioned in his presentation? We have one. And no, you cannot cheat. You cannot cheat. It should be with your brain. I know, if you cheat, it's... No? No? Really? No, I couldn't have done this one as well. Someone wants to try at least 1 or 2? Okay, then we... yes? Yeah, exactly. Congratulations. This is it. Actually, yeah, great. You didn't cheat? Yeah, just check it, because... Yeah. And just check there is no personal item, because I used them before. Can you tell us your name and organization?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Dr. Johanna Peiner from the Veterinary University in Vienna, from the Department of Wildlife Medicine.
Okay, congratulations. So, now we have the second riddle. Why Terra Mater chose cinema as a support for their documentary on their yeah.
Because the audience sits and is in captivity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Really good. Good. Sadly. Then we have this third one. What are the 2 very popular hobbies in Czech Republic? Yes? Yeah, yes, you.
I'll give it a go. So, exotic pet breeding, hunting,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there are many more.
Okay, great. Congratulations. Can you tell us your name and...
Yes, my name is Georg, and I'm working for the World Wildlife Fund here in Vienna.
The 4th one, you have to guess, because we didn't talk about it. And the 5th one will be the same. For how many years Andrea Kroster has been working in conservation projects?
25.
Yeah. Is that famous?
I just looked it up, so. I mean, before you asked the question, I had looked him up.
Okay.
I'm older than I look.
Congratulations. And the last one, it's a tricky one. I could not answer this one. It's a bit cruel for a non-scientist. What is an isotope? And this, Manfred, I let you check. I cannot answer. What is an isotope? Yes. Of something? Manfred? Is that specific enough?
We will come to the final point shortly after.
Okay, great. Congratulations. What's your name?
My name is Igor Woloschuk, and I'm a student at the Boco University in Vienna and studying environmental resources management.
Thank you very much. So, we can continue with the speakers. So, now it will be Manfred. Manfred Grönig. You go there? Mm-hmm. So, I will just introduce you. So, Manfred is the laboratory head of the Terrestrial Environment Laboratory of the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agencies. He studied physics and astronomy at the University of Heidelberg in Germany and specialized his PhD on isotopic methods in paleoclimatology and age dating of groundwater. He joined the IAEA in 1995 and was for 15 years in charge of the isotope hydrology laboratory, assisting in the proper use of various nuclear techniques to study water resources worldwide. One main function there was the responsibility for IAEA stable isotope reference materials used worldwide by all laboratories to calibrate their measurements and to ensure comparability of data. In 2010, he moved to the IAEA Terrestrial Environment Laboratory, keeping the overall responsibility for all IAEA reference material as provided to laboratories worldwide. Beside his work at the IAEA, he is a member of the International Atomic Weight Commission, the body in charge of describing relevant properties of all chemical elements. And don't worry, it's really linked to wildlife crime.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Elodie, for the nice introduction, for the invitation to present here some work. And you may wonder why you hear the name International Atomic Energy Agency. Certainly not normally expected at such a conference. As a background, the IAEA, as it's called, has about 2,500 people, but out of its 5 technical departments, one is fully devoted to application of tools to help to get information not otherwise available by nuclear techniques, isotopes, as mentioned, and I will come to that, and working in the area of human health, of agriculture, of water resources, of environment, just to focus on problems and deliver information which can be used. And another department with 200 more people is just set up to assist member states to set up laboratories and to use the information then worldwide. So that's just as backup why agency is stated here. And I will present a little piece of work. It's really a very small one compared to those people working full-time on crime prevention. We were asked for supporting a project, determination of age and origin of elephant ivory. It came in, we were working in cooperation with scientists in a German project with WWF Germany on a global timber trade network that was set up to try figure out the origin of timber, so of traded wood, of also protected species, and to find ways how to identify the origin. And as Jorge has mentioned before, one part is to have a case to go to court, but you have to have the case really waterproof, that you can get it to a really full prosecution. So what you need for evidence is this evidence has to be so clear that you cannot discuss it. And what we try with our reference materials to enable laboratories to get analysis done with a sort of robustness that nobody can quarrel the results. And if that is not under debate, you can use this data for any prosecution. That's the main role and fundamental role here for the IAEA. In many areas, we will come to that. So we were asked, could we provide wood standards which could be used, and these standards could be measured by a laboratory, and with these measurements in comparison to an sample under question, you could make up the case, is it from a certain area or not? So while starting with this work, which is not yet fully completed, we were asked by another branch of WWF Germany, maybe sitting next door, they had a project on ivory. Could IAEA assist in an international comparison? Try to see different laboratories, how to measure it, how good it is. And we said yes. I said yes because I was very naive and did not think about the administrative problems which could be encompassing in trying to ship ivory in a legal way from country A to country B. But I will come to that in a minute. So first I want to tell you, and to come back to the answer of our colleague here from the BOKU about what are stable isotopes, why you need them. You see here a picture of something we know, and it's nice, it's clear, it's sharp, but does it deliver all the information we may like to have? For example, is it one flower or two? You would say it's one flower. If you add some information on it, you see a spot on the left side. Oh, maybe it's two flowers, but one is not very precise, so you couldn't see it before. That's an additional information. The same is with the traffic light. Very clear, everybody will know exactly what it is about. But does it solve our problem? The problem may be we come close to it, can we go on with our car or should we stop? It doesn't give us the information we need. Only when we add some more information to it, we suddenly see, okay, we should stop here. So that is how to use the full information an object or so can offer. And what I can say, stable isotopes are just the color of the elements, giving additional information, which you cannot get easily by looking, for example, at the chemistry, how much chlorine, how much calcite or so is in an object. I want to visualize it a bit. That is a map, worldwide map about precipitation. The colors are not the water amount, but this is the isotopic composition of water. And you see a lot of variability, a very strange scale there, but don't bother. The colors are just telling how much of what isotope species are in the precipitation. And based on that information, the varying color per country, per region, and the variation on a yearly cycle, you can get a lot of information, and that is used in many scientific disciplines, from water resources to food products, to agriculture, even to human health, even in forensics. And there's a lot of studies going on in this area by 10,000s of scientists worldwide. So just to say, what are stable isotopes? One easy example, water. You have all of you water in front of you, have maybe had a drink, so you put in some atoms in your body. And these atoms consist out of, or these molecules of water consist out of atoms, and there's oxygen inside. And the normal oxygen is O16 called. What is that? It is an atom having 8 protons, so it defines that it's oxygen, and then number of neutrons, the glue which keeps it together. But you have another species which has 2 neutrons more. It's stable, it's safe, we all have it in our body. In a proportion, there is one of the heavy atom towards about 500 of the light atoms. And that is in everybody of us, it's in any animal, it's in the oceans, it's in the glaciers in the world, it's in the Antarctic. So if it's all the same, what does it help us? It wouldn't help us. But it's not completely everywhere the same. So the range is about 10% difference between the Antarctic and the oceans. And therefore, this small range, that can be measured very precisely, and that gives you some information about this water molecule. From such a measurement, we can figure out, is it local tap water and precipitation in Vienna, or is it coming from another area, a high altitude area? And you would see, as you know, where our tap water is from, you could scientifically figure out it cannot be local precipitation water. Now, what does it help us? It tells you about the origin of water. Is it local, is it not local? If you go about forensics and wildlife crime, is this elephant from this region, is it from another region? That is the link we get. Now, our role is not to do all these measurements, but we provide reference material to laboratories. They buy it. There are about 45 different materials available, and we sell it to 400 laboratories a year. And we sell many more other items, but that is now relevant for this purpose. I will not go into C14, for example. That is our role, and that is being used in many scientific applications. From climate change, get the atmospheric CO2 right and the sources of things, to hydrology, to food authentication, wood origin, and latest, even ivory. So it's being used in such global carbon cycle studies when we see the increase of CO2 and you want to know where is it from, the long-term debate where, what is the origin of this and what is the impact of humans. Success stories from my colleague Simon Kelly from agriculture. The same methodology can be used to identify the origin of food products like basmati rice. Is it really from the region or is it a false product just labeled in a different way and comes from another region? And with some kind of multi-parameter approach, I've shown now oxygen, but you would see trace elements and you would look at different isotopic species, you get a wealth of information and then you get a fingerprint of this basmati rice, a typical fingerprint of basmati rice. And other rice varieties from other regions look different. And then you can distinguish them. Same procedure for timber as looked before. Trees are growing, they consume water. We have seen the picture, the colorful picture of water in the world. So they get the oxygen and the hydrogen in. So they have this color of the map inside. So you can trace wood species according to their isotopic composition of these items. Same would be for tortoises and other animals, of course. And part of this work is done here and supported by IEA. Now coming to the ivory laboratory intercomparison, that's very a small part. We were asked, can we organize such an intercomparison? So we asked laboratories in the world, which we knew had capabilities, were really good and could be interested in it. Laboratories said yes. Not all could be. We were successful because sometimes the administration was too complicated. We couldn't import it to a country. For 3 of the laboratories, we are still fighting now for 1 year to get the import license to send 2 grams of ivory to each laboratory. So it's a painstaking, complicated process. So unfortunately, the project, which was initiated by WWF and the German Ministry of Environment, now is already finished. So they looked about the stable isotopes, origin and age of elephant ivory. Our intercomparison is still ongoing. Why it is still useful? Because you want to show, as a matter of principle, are laboratories able to get a precision that you can distinguish sample from each other. And only when you can say, you can prove this ivory is not from a region where it's declared off. You don't know where it is from, but at least you know it's not from where the declaration says. You know something is really wrong here. And the submission is still ongoing. We have only results from 5 laboratories. And what is plotted here is just the same isotopes like for case of oxygen. Here you have carbon and here you have nitrogen. And we had 2 ivory samples from unknown origin, seized by German customs at the border years ago. And these are the results of 5 laboratories each. They cluster very well and they are really distinct off from each other. So not a problem to distinguish these are 2 different samples. Now that looks okay, job done, we can do it. Not fully clear because when you look at a database, because you have 2 specimens, what does it tell you? You need to know where do you refer to. You want to prove, is this ivory from a country Z or is it not from a country Z? So you need a database. And there is, fortunately, there is a database now on the web. You can go there, you can open it, you put in your data which you have measured, like this, which I've shown before, and I did it just 2 days ago. I typed in the average of the values we got. and then it gives you an output. That should be from sample number 1. It should be from here, higher probability, and the second one should be from another country. Now, that's not clear why the results are showing so nice evidence, because it says, okay, they should be from an origin which is far away from each other. Probability that their differences is high. If it's close, and you would look for a sample here and a sample from here, it will not be so evident, and you have to look much more careful, and then the job is not done. With 2 isotopes, then you need to have more. You need trace elements, you need other isotopes, and suddenly the picture becomes more fluffy. You need more scientific investigation, but we are really very, very optimistic that this tool proves extremely useful and that in many cases you can use it. There are some problems with it. Some problems were just overcome by associated other projects. So the innovation part is certainly, we are there and we try to support it. And with that, we are really confident that we can make a contribution to ensure data are provided in a quality which can be used in court cases and therefore will support all the work by inspectors, later on by prosecution and by legal cases, and then to make a case for the prevention. Whether it's now in the case of ivory for wildlife, whether it's illegal logging and rainwood forest protection, whether it's in the case of food protection, there are many areas where a lot of problems are there. We don't jump out of the window, but we certainly stay inside and do our job and try to, from a scientific basis, to get it sorted out. Coming back to James Bond, we are certainly not James Bond, we are also not Mr. Q, but maybe we are some colleagues of his team to get some new weapons, which hopefully don't explode in our hands. Okay, that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So, we are now welcoming Andrea Crosta. So Andrea has, as you all know now, 25 years of experience in conservation projects around the world. And in a parallel business career, he first launched one of the first e-commerce companies in Italy in 1998. Then he has been working for over 16 years as an international consultant to companies and governmental agencies on high-end homeland security technologies and services. He's the co-founder and executive director of the US-based Elephant Action League, an innovative hybrid non-profit NGO that merges the worlds of intelligence, investigation, and conservation. He is among the founding and supervisory board members of the Wildlife Justice Commission in The Hague, and the creator and project manager of WildLeaks, the world's first whistleblowing initiative dedicated to wildlife crime. Andrea is also, as you know, among the main protagonists of the Netflix documentary The Ivory Game. Thank you, Andrea.
So, thank you very much, first of all, for organizing this. It's a really, really interesting event and location. Today, I would like to use this opportunity to talk about intelligence and to talk about why I think, and my organization thinks, that intelligence is what we think the most effective short-term and long-term tool that we have to fight wildlife crime. So I will describe what we do, but I will also try to explain, of course, what we mean for intelligence, because it means many different things. A common mistake, for example, is to mix investigation and intelligence. They are completely two different things. But let's start first with a look at other global threats, okay? Like me. Okay. Terrorism, for example, or narco-trafficking, organized crime, weapons of mass destruction, biological and non, even cyber terrorism or cyber crime. So all those global threats intelligence is the very central strategic resource that we have to fight back. We can debate on sometimes intelligence is not right, is faulty, but I think we all agree that if you take out intelligence work from those wars, we will be lose very soon. The only way to try to be more or less on top of it, although we are not, but is intelligence. In the case of wildlife crime, and for wildlife crime, of course, I include also illegal timber and illegal fishing, there's no intelligence, is almost absent entirely. So we have what is, by many reports and studies, is the fourth criminal enterprise in the world, between 92 and 260 billion. So it's a massive criminal enterprise with really, really sophisticated, as Jorge was saying before, networks behind and people and everything, and yet there's no intelligence. So we have what I call a reactive attitude towards this problem. We're always running after a problem. We are always, okay, we are seizing something, but it happened already. We are catching a poacher's red hand. It already killed the animals, or traffickers. So we constantly running after, never be proactive. So for years, and that's a slight critic from my side to media, to donors, to some of other NGOs. This is the supply chain, this is the trafficking routes for ivory and seizure in 2012-13, but it's just an example to show you, to explain what I have in mind. So for years, the attention from donors and NGOs and government entities has been focused pretty much on the two very ends of this supply chain, okay? On the one hand, you have what I call ground zero. So you have the poaching ground, in this case we're talking about ivory and elephants, but I can show you exactly the same map for pangolin, for tiger, for many other species. So we have lots of money and lots of attention going into anti-poaching, training the rangers, we need more weapons, we need drones, and then tomorrow we need, I don't know, Tomahawk missiles, I don't know, and we still have today donors and organizations that think that they can solve the problem at the anti-poaching level, which is a gigantic mistake, of course. Okay? Every time you do anti-poaching, which is very important to do and to fund, but every time you do anti-poaching, you are not addressing the problem, you're just barely containing the problem. You are not addressing the problem at all. So you can find yourself for years spending millions of dollars just trying to keep the animals alive. Again, you have to do it, but this is not the root of the problem. The other end of the supply chain, where a lot of donors and NGOs are putting money, is the very, very end. I mean, is the consumers, is the guy physically buying a piece of ivory. So you see lots of money and activities putting into trying to change the minds of the buyers, change the habits of the consumers. Again, very important activity. It takes forever. And I met personally traffickers, traders, and consumers in Asia. I assure you those people do not care at all about those campaigns. So again, very important to have them because you look at the next generation, so you have to put the seeds for a behavioral change, but many species do not have this time to wait for the next generation of Asian, Chinese or whatever, even European, to not do certain things. So in the middle of the supply chain, which start right after the poaching and finish right before the consumer is buying, this is where, in my opinion, lies the core of the problem, where this is where most of the people are making real money. And this is actually where you find very sophisticated, very good, not only traffickers, but also brokers and middlemen and businessmen. And they really know what they're doing. So this is where my organization is mostly focused. And this is where I think donors and media and government entities should put more attention and more money. this situation here pretty much sums up the status of intelligence work on wildlife crime. So in almost all the countries where we operate, police does not have money for informants. So if you don't have money to pay informants, what kind of investigation you're doing? I mean, what kind of intelligence you're gathering to be proactive, I mean. To the point that not only we are doing sometimes their job, but also we are giving money to the sources on behalf of the police because they don't have it. And this is what Jorge was saying before. In other crimes, they do have money because it comes from different sources. So if you are against terrorists or narco traffickers, you do have money to pay the sources. In this case, you don't have it. So this is why 4 years ago I put together the two professional careers I had in my life. One is conservation and wildlife protection for many, many years, as we understood, and the other one is a professional sort of business career in the field of intelligence, homeland security, investigation, and different kind of technologies. I merged those two fields, creating the Elephant Action League. Elephant is it's in our name, but it's by far is not the only thing we do. On the contrary, and this is pretty much what we do. We collect information, we produce intelligence, we analyze this information and this intelligence, and then we disseminate this actionable intelligence in order to achieve concrete results. Our team is, I would say, is an exceptional team of people that I kind of handpick one by one. Either I find them or they find me. As you can see, they all come from a certain field. So from US military intelligence, FBI, special operations, police officers, criminal analysts, of course, cyber expert, and then a wide network of, I will elaborate a little bit in a while, of undercover operatives. Today, we are lucky to have in this room one of them, and is Mike, if you can raise your hand. Do not ask for his last name because he will not tell you his last name. He's instructed to do so. But he's very approachable, and he's an example of how you can use experience from really, really complicated and difficult operational scenarios, like the fights against terrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya or even Southeast Asia, and how you can apply these skills and this methodology to wildlife crime, to the fight against wildlife crime. So very quickly about us, we've been established in Los Angeles in 2013. This is our only legal base. We have unofficial regional hubs, so to speak, in certain places around the world. Unofficial because, of course, in target countries where we operate, we don't have an official presence, we don't have official staff, and we don't have offices. If you do have offices and staff, then there's a limit to what you can do and say in that country, and then it becomes very dangerous for everyone. This is our mission, basically. So through effective intelligence collection and investigative efforts, we try to protect nature. And as we saw before, we have a very variegated team background, but mostly coming from intelligence and law enforcement. So what we mean for intelligence, if you want, so the innovative part of our work is not that innovative, but is actually taking entirely the skills, the MOs, and the methodologies from the intelligence world, as you all more or less imagine, and take them into an NGO. So acting as an intelligence agency at the service of this planet, but in private hands. It's all starting, of course, with ongoing information gathering on a wide scale. The important part of this phrase is ongoing information. So in order to own the territory in terms of information gathering, you have to be there all the time. You have to have your sources working for you constantly for years. So it's not the source or the fixer that you trigger when you're doing an investigation. It's people working constantly, harvesting information, all possible information for us, and of course managed professionally by a series of handlers and lead investigators with the backup of analysts in order to to first of all have an idea of what we are gathering and then analyze and produce intelligence. We focus especially on brokers, traffickers, businessmen, government officers, of course, origin, transit, and destination countries. I know the media like this word, like kingpins. Let's fight the kingpins. Let's kill the kingpins. In my approach, there are almost no kingpins in wildlife crime. There are just very successful traffickers, very successful businessmen. Some of them. There's no Pablo Escobar. There are two clear cases like the Vietnamese guy, the Laos guy, but in general, is highly misleading because then you have the idea, okay, let's find these 3-4 guys, chop their heads, and problem solved. And it's not, because they're not only 3-4 guys. It's much more fluid and complicated, the network of traffickers. Of course, we do field investigation ourselves with the intelligence that we collect. Collection of evidence is very, very important for us because we do what we do to help law enforcement. And because, as you see, we share a lot with law enforcement. So law enforcement needs evidence. They don't need rumors or I heard that. No, evidence. We also working on these fusion center and analysis, so places where we can use certain softwares and certain methodologies to extract information. You'll be surprised what you can extract from open sources, from social media, and of course from the documents that come in. Actionable intelligence, very, very important part of what we do, is actually our most important product. So intelligence that a law enforcement agency can use right away, for example, to investigate themselves. We call it confidential intel briefs. To give you an example, our last investigation on rhino horn trafficking in China, which was the very first undercover investigation on rhino horn trafficking by an NGO, the public report is about 100 pages. The confidential intel brief, only for law enforcement, is 200 pages and contain the information of 55 persons of interest identified by us as rhino or other wildlife traffickers, with plenty of information, evidence, video, footage, all possible data that law enforcement can use. Sometimes we share intelligence. Actually, we try as much as we can with law enforcement. This is an arrest triggered by us in Thailand. The way we work here is very delicate. I can tell you that in certain countries, police is arresting people thanks to our information, and they know that information is coming from us. In some other countries, I cannot tell you, they are arresting people and they don't know the information is coming from us. Because, especially in Africa, as we saw with Wayne, things can be very, very tricky. And so it's better for us to put multiple layers between us and law enforcement. As long as they do something concrete, then we're happy to be in the back. And this is the public reports. Of course, we are a public charity after all, so we owe the public explanation of what we are doing. With this methodology, this is a few examples of our work. This is Operation Red Cloud, just finished a few months ago. 11 months of work on rhino horn trafficking in China and Vietnam. And this is all, and you know, to get a picture like this or a meeting like that, maybe it's 6 months of work just for that meeting, because our people has to, first of all, pretend to be traffickers themselves or traders or business or whatever. They have to get the trust of certain people. They have to be introduced by certain people to other people. And finally, like in this case, they sit in the private home of, in this case, of a very important trafficker in Vietnam. And finally, that's the showtime when they can really get a lot of information from these people and get evidence. So it's not just a picture, it's a lot of work behind the picture. This is an example of the confidential intel brief that we share with law enforcement. As you see, for every person, this is one of them, of the 55, comes a case file with all the links to specific audio files and video files that we share with the brief, where law enforcement can find exactly when or where the person is talking about the rhino and what he's saying, and everything, of course, comes in this case, either transcribed from Vietnamese and Chinese into. So there's a lot of work also back home by our analysts. This is Operation Game Over that you will see in the Ivory game later. This is a small video. If you could just click it just for a few seconds. And this is what I mean for evidence. You know, this is a room in Beijing filled with ivory. And of course, it's not just the visual part that is important. But in the meantime, this guy in Chinese is explaining the whole thing, and this comes from here, and this comes from there, and I met this guy, and I work with this guy in Mombasa. So these are all information that then back home are extracted by our people and put it in the system and put it in the context of the production of intelligence. Operation Australia, a few months ago, we have been following an orangutan trafficker for more than a year. Then he had 4 orangutans, 3 died for oversedation. The 4th one was sold for about $4,000. And then he went underground and he resurfaced again as a bird trafficker. So we decided to bust him as bird trafficker. As long as we bust him, it's fine. And we had a successful raid with the Royal Thai Police, and the guy was arrested. And now he's collaborating. So another very important part. This is Operation Jonah in South Africa. We had 5 arrests in the last 7 months, mostly related to rhino, but not only. This is an example where our people, almost by chance, help law enforcement in doing something else. So one of these guys, we were following him for wildlife trafficking, and then finally our informants gave the information to the police. But then actually when they opened the car of this guy, the wildlife was the last of the problem, because the guy was into witchcraft. So there was a head of a young woman, 2 hands and a heart. So he was arrested for witchcraft and human parts trafficking. So this is how many things overlap when you talk about wildlife crime, and this is how you bust these people, as long as you bust them. Operation Fake Gold. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the issue of the illegal fishing of totoaba in Baja California and the extinction of the vaquita, the little porpoise. We are also working as we speak on this. And then finally, as a piece of innovation, of course, there is Wild Leaks. We launched it 3 years ago. In my mind, it's still in its infancy, because it still has to show its real potential. As I don't know if you know the initiative, but you know, we basically built on the Tor technology. We we created a secure platform where people can securely and anonymously share with us information about wildlife trafficking, poaching, illegal timber, and so on. It's a very proactive initiative, because it's one of the ways we have to get information that we use. So basically, the information from Wild Leaks feeds into the same sort of fusion center that for everything else. And then, of course, we investigate ourselves. So it's exactly the opposite of WikiLeaks, if you think about it. That, you know, I usually present Wild Leaks as a sort of WikiLeaks without the freaks. So because in my opinion, WikiLeaks just dump stuff on the media without filtering, and also sometimes without thinking about the consequences of dumping certain stuff. While in Wild Leaks, we filter everything, we don't dump anything, every information for us has a value just in terms of how can I use this information to help law enforcement to fulfill its mission. So this is how we work. And in 3 years, we received around 120 submissions, and 25 more or less important. But again, I think we still have to see the full potential of Wild Leaks. We recently closed a partnership with the National Whistleblowing Center in Washington. It's an office specialized in whistleblowing. In particular, there are many laws in the United States that have a provision to pay monetary rewards to people with information, but people with information don't know about these laws. So we are trying to be in the middle and see if there is a way to get really important information about high-level traffickers in exchange for money, of course. And this is the last slide. So the value of true intelligence work, and I put true because it has to be professionally run by professionals. Of course, we're talking about the fourth knowledge, so what we should have in our, what we should get in order to be proactive, information and facts. So permanent eyes and ears on the ground. Of course, it's another additional support to the disruption of this network and to arrest and to facilitate arrest and prosecution. In my opinion, also real intelligence also decreases now there is this issue of militarization of conservation. So you see all these people around with weapons and shooting, and when they shoot the poachers, nine times out of 10 the poacher is just a poor guy, you know, that who need money, and maybe I would be a poacher myself, so I cannot blame them entirely. So, but that's what people like. And so if real intelligence work decrease the militarization, because you know before what is happening. And of course, it's a way, of course, to help government, but also to hold them accountable, because we gather all sort of information on all sort of people, also in unconventional ways that is better here not to share, but we are very, let's say, creative in the way we get information. And so as you can imagine, some law enforcement agency like us and some others know that's why we keep a very, very low profile. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So maybe we can start with the questions from the audience. Don't be shy, they don't bite. Any question? Yes, thank you. Can you open the... Yeah.
My question is to Ms. Riova. It was an interesting video. I like the sound effects of it, to be honest. But I would like to know, because you showed how you busted the trunks among the cables. You were being tipped, right? Somebody informed you. There were informants. That's how you got to know it, right?
You mentioned broad, or I don't understand well. Could you repeat the question, please?
In the video, you showed like
Yes.
there was ivory that was hidden inside the cable, like where they grabbed the cable.
Yeah.
And if I understand correctly, there are no scanners for ivory. So how do you know that it's hidden in there? Somebody must have tipped you, right?
It's a typical question. This seizure was a result of quite long-term investigations. This hidden method inside electric coil, it's not possible to find by normal methods as X-ray screening, by monitoring by customs, or even by sniffer dogs. It's a really, really effective hidden method. So you must know about these shipments, so and monitor all shipments from the company. So, as I mentioned, and Andrea mentioned, without intelligence, information, and quite long-term investigations, you cannot be successful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I saw this movie a few days ago. I will introduce my I'm Spencer from the Norwegian Permanent Mission to the UN. I saw the Ivory Game a few days ago, and I don't want to... It's a very good movie. I won't see it again, but I have a question regarding the movie, and I hope you can answer. So, I was very impressed about how brave these people who took part, including Mr. Costa. But I would like if you could just give a brief update on this Hong. It was, of course, he was maybe the most brave person of all of you. So I would like to know if he's okay, how he has been treated after the movie. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe also Richard can talk about it a little bit. He's still working with me, actually. He's part of our extended team of undercover agents. He has a more supervisory role, kind of, because it has been widely exposed. I can tell you that we recently use his collaboration in certain countries, not Asia and not Africa, because in some places he can still go, but it's in many other instances we have an internal project in Elephant actually called Project Yuxia, which is Yuxia is in the Chinese mythology there were some sort of Knight Templars. So So I created this project last year with Hong in order to train the next generation of young Chinese, both investigators and environmentalists in general, because believe me, there are huge potential in China. There are lots of young Chinese ready to help, ready to make a difference. So he has this role, and also he has other things, more sort of not investigative related. So, but he's in China, he's half of a celebrity right now, right?
Yeah, I was there when we presented the film in Beijing, and Hong was the superstar. Like, he was received like a celebrity, you cannot believe it. He was surrounded by about 100 girls who all wanted a WeChat photo with him, and he's like a hero to the country in a way. So it was incredible to see him progress over the 4 years that we spent with him, from a completely, greenhorn in the whole thing, a very scared, undercover, wannabe investigator. Throughout the film, he became more and more brave, and he also was willing to take more risks. And the more he got into it and knew about it, he became a real pro in the end, and he led his own team into Vietnam, and he took bigger risks. But he also, as Wolfgang told you, decided to become a public figure. That wasn't the plan, actually. We wanted to protect him by all means. And in the trailers that we produced, and even in the rough cuts, he was blurred and his voice was changed. But then he decided to come out, and he really wanted this. And that's why it's also said in the film. He says it in the film. He signed 3 releases because we didn't want this, but we believe that he wants to bring true change in China, and by exposing his face, he can inspire others to do so. And just 2 days ago, in the China South Morning Post or something, one of the biggest magazines, newspapers, there was a big article on him where he's reaching out to fellow Chinese people to become the next generation of undercover investigators, because his cover is blown, it's too dangerous for him, but he wants other people to follow in his footsteps and to inspire more. And that's one of the greatest achievements, I think, also of this movie, is inspiration. That's why we made the film for various reasons. One was to help save the elephants, but also the other one was to inspire people, like to really follow in the footsteps of the people that we show, and maybe become the next heroes, and maybe, make a difference somehow. And that's also the power, I think, of movies in general in that field, is we want to reach out to millions of people and bring all these amazing things that we heard today and what these people do to a massive audience, so that there are others out there who feel inspired and who want to help and want to do something. And every one of us can make a difference. We just decided that, well, we are filmmakers, so we can make a movie, and that movie can then go on Netflix to 104 million people in 160 countries in like dozens of languages, and basically reach so many people out there to say, I want to be like these guys. I want to go out and, expose the illegal criminals and help save the planet. And that's why we want to make these films, and that's why I think we are also somehow an important tool that, can help bring change. So, long answer.
What can we expect after the end of 2017, when China bans the ivory trade? Maybe Andrea?
Well, first of all, they're doing it according to our information. They're closing retailers and carving facilities, and they are doing it. Then from January 18, very interesting scenarios will open up, because in theory, with very few exceptions like antique ivory, there will be no legal market anymore. Part of it will go underground, most probably, it's already a lot as underground, but part of it will go underground. So it will become, unlike today, it will become 100% a law enforcement sort of problem. Okay. Now it's confusing. I agree. You know, you go into a shop and this is legal, this is not legal. What is the card? You know, it's a mess. But in theory, should facilitate the work of law enforcement. I really hope the Chinese will also do that part. From our 2015 investigation that you will see in the film, we talking with traders, traffickers, retailers, carvers, especially. They know a lot, carvers, of course. We assess that there are probably around 1,000 tons of illegal ivory in the country, in China. So apart from the legal part, and some of them in the hands of speculators and investors. You know, we heard more than once people just piling up tasks for the future. I'm sure they're doing also with Reinhold. So we don't really know what will happen to these 1,000 tons. You know, it's complicated. The more I go to China, the more I work to China, and the more part of me understands the problems they have in China. So every possible traffic and contraband that you can imagine, they have it on a big scale with thousands of miles of board. I mean, it's a mess. I understand it's not easy. That's why we try to help. So I don't know what will happen now. We are on the right path, and probably the first important things that we will have to see is in Africa, it will become less easy to sell ivory during the first part of the supply chain. So already the traffickers working on the African side should stop buying ivory sooner or later. I think it's already happening a little. And then as a consequence, less killing, of course. But that's a very interesting scenario opening up now.
Can I just add something? I saw something very recently and heard it as well from one of the investigators that mammoth is going to be a big problem because the mammoth ivories trade is still allowed and will be allowed beyond that date. So if the mammoth trade is now spiking up, that will be the next laundering facility for illegal ivory, because once you carve mammoth to a Buddha figure, it looks like ivory, it's just a little brown. So what they can do is they can, you know, when they run out of mammoth or it's not so easy to get, they can again bring in the illegal ivory, carve it, color it into like this brownish thing and say it's antique ivory. So unless you can prove it with isotopes that it's from Africa, which is very expensive and very difficult to do, it could be the next problem. So, yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, I had a question for Mr. Groening. I was wondering how complete is, you had mentioned the Ivory ID database, and I was wondering for timber, how complete is the database for timber, and for the lab equipment that your agency offers, how difficult is it to use? Are customs agencies and private companies able to use it, or is a specialized lab needed? Thank you.
In regards to timber, this project is going on since about 4 years, sponsored by the German government, and it's far from completion. So the database has started to collect data sets, but that is certainly, I would guess, at least 5 more years are needed with the involvement of several laboratories to get enough specimens and data to fully utilize it. It's nothing you can get in success in a very short time. So it needs a lot of money, a lot of investigations, investment to get it done. For this ivory database, I learned it from the homepage. It's about 700 or a bit more than 700 items there. For that's enough because it's one species. For woods, each wood species is different. So it's another magnitude of problem. Regular equipment as being available in many isotope laboratories would be enough doing that, and that can be shown. And that's one of the point having it on international scale. You have to be sure that a laboratory in whatever country, whether it's Australia or Canada or Chile, can do the same. And then you can get the scheme in line. it's going on, and I think it will progress relatively fast.
Please.
We always think that we in Europe are the good guys and just the Asians are the bad guys. It was really good to hear that seemingly we Europeans are the kingpins in trafficking live animals. Can you give a little bit more insight into how big this problem is in Europe, how these trafficking, with the example of the tigers, really work, and how can that be that in the European Union we don't have a law that we have laws that each country can allow to keeping tigers as a private person?
We would like to know it. It's a quite difficult question. Concerning live animals, as I mentioned, European Union has how to say it? European Union has EU regulation, but we have 28 countries, 28 national legislation, 28 national structures, government structures, and budgets. Every European country has own rules even concerning live animals. My colleague asked me during lunchtime, we discussed about tigers, why it's possible to keep live tigers by private breeders in the Czech Republic. In some European countries, this keeping of big cats, not only tigers, is prohibited. In Czech Republic, not. But prohibited, as I know, it's in the Netherlands. I am not sure about Great Britain. But most of European countries have no such strict rules. Everything is possible from my point of view. We don't know exactly about routes, about methods of trade in live tigers, especially. The big problem is connections of keeping of big cats, live tigers, but lions too, with trade in products and in bodies. Our suspicion in this moment is that private breeders in the Czech Republic, but unfortunately I suppose that similar situation can be in other countries. Czech Republic, based on my information, Czech Republic is first country in Europe which is more focused on live tigers, because the tigers are tigers from captivity, from perspective of normal enforcement and conservative experts. It's a useless tigers without importance, from captivity, sometimes hybrids, so nothing important. But they are important as source of material for black markets, and they feed black markets in Europe and maybe probably in Asia too. We think that some breeders of live big cats, lions too, are connected with Asian Vietnamese gangs, syndicates, and sell them tigers. We don't know if live tigers or dead tigers. We don't know if they kill tigers or if the tigers died themselves, how to say it. We don't have enough information in this moment. It's about intelligence. In this moment, we have only some amount of information that something is wrong. Some tigers are missing, some tiger cubs are missing. There is a very high mortality, strange mortality. We have increasing number of seizures, tiger products in Europe. And these routes and these cases are the smuggling is from Europe to Asian countries, mostly to Vietnam. So I cannot say in this moment who is kingpin or where is the big problem, but we suppose that inside Vietnamese community. But unfortunately, some breeders, European breeders, are involved.
And we will take a last question. Yes, I just would like to mention that Ivory game will start really at 4:30 because we have to leave after the room really at 7 maximum. So we will be really respecting the schedule. Voilà. So last question, please. Yeah, it's you.
Thanks, Elodie. Well, yes, Andrea, the middle of the supply chain is truly the most complicated thing to crack. And I would like to ask Ms. Rihova and Mr. Jorge Rios on how international agencies like the UNODC and conventions like CITES, which regulate international trade, could react maybe better on that international component of trafficking with people you don't know that are involved.
Well, to be honest, yeah, I can't make anything up. I heard the end of your question. That's why I was hoping Pablo would take the question. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know. I don't know. Concerning international collaboration, we need, it's a crucial thing, we need international collaboration. Andrea mentioned that effort, money, and I don't know, are focused only on poaching and consuming end of the business chain, not on the all business chain. Many parts of business chain and enforcement effort focused on this part are missing. We try to collaborate on international level. It's very, very difficult because we have different legislation, different rules. Yes, we have Interpol channels, we have CITES channels, we have Europol channels, mutual legal assistance at a prosecutor's level, but usually these channels take very long time. We have requests, for example, to South Africa or to Brazil concerning some our cases, and it's 2-3 years till some result, some response. I have requests to Brazil without any response after many years. So some countries are not willing to collaborate. It's only about everybody may speak about coordination, cooperation, collaboration, CCC theory, but it's only formal. Very often it's not effective. From my perspective as a wildlife inspector many years, only effective channel is informal contacts. If I know person on opposite side, I can call him or write email and discuss or change information. Unfortunately, this way of sharing information is not correct for prosecution and trial. So it's a never-ending story and never-ending problem. And we, during every conference, even meeting of Interpol, Europol, European Commission, we still speak about the same thing and warning that it's not effective, there is a problem. But do you have any solution, Jorge?
With the UN, we always have the solution. Thank you, Paula. I'll be quick. I think what Paula said there was the issue of confidence, you know. And where Andrea and his folks come in is I think they recognize that, you know, you can't wait for intelligence agencies to get to know each other. Look, the truth is, you can only share information. You only share good information with your friend. Yeah. So what we do is we try to establish that coordination among states by hosting events where for 3 weeks you have intelligence officers sitting in the same room with intelligence officers from another country so they get to know each other. So they can, instead of going through the formal national central bureaus or agencies, they can call immediately. I can call Andrea tomorrow and he says, hey, I know Jorge, we can chat. But if I pick up the phone and call Manfred, who I didn't know, and ask him, he'd probably be a little reluctant. So what we try to do is we establish this personal connection. But you'll also be very surprised, some of you not, that a lot of these countries don't have formal intelligence gathering systems. Yeah, we had to set up an intelligence gathering mechanism in Gabon. Yeah, and I would say off the record, sorry for my colleagues from the missions here, please don't repeat, but it was very difficult. Yeah. Yeah, not because of the senior government leaders who are completely committed, we understand, in Gabon. It was just a lot of folks are very reluctant to work with other agencies in their country because they don't work with customs normally or police or the environmental agencies. So, we had to set up from scratch an intelligence information sharing system, which then produced intelligence. Now, whether or not that's being used is another issue. So it has to do with building trust amongst those that we want to share information. And poor Pavla, she deals with a really tough situation with the request. I know you haven't mentioned it for obvious reasons, but it's just so difficult. This intelligence, you can't get anywhere without having that information. So I'm sorry I didn't listen to your question. I was just, the pangolin needs to go home. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I will just quickly thanks, of course, the speakers for being here today. And the public as well, because you registered on time and you all came, which is nice. There are some people who did not, but you did, and we really appreciate. And I would like also to thank quickly the people who helped us for the conference. It's not going to take long. So Clemens Douce for sharing his skills as a designer for this conference, especially graphic design. Antoine Jourjon, photographer of the event today. Bernardo Rocarreiros, who is a Peruvian diplomat who worked before with UNODC on wildlife crime in Vienna and who became a wildlife photographer. He gave us the leopard picture that you've seen. Dr. Harald Schwammer, Deputy Director of the Zoo of Vienna, he welcomed Fabien and I during the preparation of the conference and gave us the contact detail of the Director General of the Museum of the Natural History Museum, Mr. Christian Koebel. This time I will try to pronounce it well. I would like also to thank the UN staff that helped us, people from UN Safety and Security, Gary, Georgiana, Bernhard, Michal, people from conference services, Linto, Jani, Thomas, people from building management services, Kamal and Mr. Mehar, also the infrastructure committee, and Rabi, Anna, and Antoine, who helped today at Gate 1 for you to get your badges. Thank you very much. We are very grateful for the smooth organization of this conference. Thank you.